there and welcome to this episode of BFG Reviews. As always, I want to start by genuinely saying thanks to anyone that's watched my previous videos and remind everyone to please like, share, and subscribe. Now, on to this week's review, which is...
Gru's been compromised. I'm coming for my revenge, Gru. We have to get to the safe house.
Intruders! Aha! Guardate il burrito.
Despicable Me 4. Directed by Chris Renaud and Patrick DeLage, written by Mike White and Ken Dario, and starring Steve Carell as Gru, Will Ferrell as Maxine Lamal, Kristen Wiig as Lucy, Joey King as Poppy, and Pierre Coffin as the voice of the Minions. Despicable Me 4 follows Gru and his family, including its newest member, Gru Jr., as they are forced to relocate to hide from Maxine Lamal, an old rival of Gru that seeks to destroy him and everything he holds dear. So, if it sounds like nothing happens in that description, that's because nothing happens in the movie. Let's dive straight into it. Despicable Me 4 is not a good film. It's not even an okay film. It's barely a film at all. It's more of a series of unconnected, mostly unfunny vignettes, most of which have little to no consequence on the plot. Gru is the only character that's given anything to do, and even that is bare bones. Lucy and the girls have their own scenes, but they're completely removed from the rest of the story, making it hard to find any reason to care. Many of the concepts in Despicable Me 4 were already done in previous Despicable Me movies, and done with more success. Even the new ideas the film does introduce don't go anywhere, and just add to the unconnected nature of this film. Like I said, the main crux behind Despicable Me 4 is that Gru must move his family to the suburbs in order to keep them safe, and how they all struggle to fit in. But I just don't understand how the filmmakers thought this was a good idea for this franchise. Much of the humor from the first couple films came from watching these larger-than-life characters exist in the mundanity of suburbia. So it doesn't make sense that Gru and his family would have such a difficult time adjusting to this quote-unquote new setting. And most of the fish out of water scenes have literally zero effect on the story. Lucy being a bad hairdresser or Edith showing up the local karate sensei could have been fun additions if the filmmakers found a way to connect them back to the story. But these scenes create conflict and do nothing to actually resolve any of that conflict. The other chunk of this film is devoted to the Minions becoming office employees of the Anti-Villains League, with a select few being given superpowers. Not only have we seen both of these concepts before, with the Minions being seen in an office-like setting in the first film, and them getting powers in both the second Despicable Me and Minions films, but also the Minions in those films were actually part of the story and not just a distraction jumping on whatever bandwagon was popular at the moment. And in this case, it's both superhero movies and superhero fatigue. Technically, the super or mega Minions, whatever they call them, do play a part in the climax, but other than that, they are mostly used for a single montage of superhero-based jokes, some of which I will admit I actually laughed at, including a reference to the train scene in Spider-Man 2. Quick side note, there are a lot of weird, out-of-place, and out-of-date references throughout the film, like the
Honey Badger don't care
meme and the Terminator movies, with the latter getting an entire scene and multiple musical stings.
you. Get back here.
Yes, the other Despicable Me films included pop culture references, but they were usually quick visual gags and not entire scenes. But back to what I was talking about. The humor just isn't there in Despicable Me 4. I remember seeing Despicable Me 2 in theaters while I was in college and laughing my ass off. I actually embarrassed my roommate at the time because of how loud and how much I was laughing. To be fair, I wasn't exactly sober during that screening. And I rewatched it recently and it's still a very enjoyable and funny film. But Despicable Me 4 barely got a few chuckles from me. The joke that worked the best was actually a callback to a joke from the second film.
Bottom.
Other than that, much of the humor in Despicable Me 4 just doesn't land. And that's coming from someone who enjoyed the first 3 Despicable Me movies. Even the Minions, who I again usually enjoy, seem like toned down versions of themselves. They used to be chaotic yellow gremlins that both had a sweet side and a thirst for violence. And now they're just irritating yellow things that make jokes purely aimed at those still in diapers. Much of the darker humor in general has completely disappeared. Gone are the jokes about adults acting apathetic towards children dying.
Stay away from there, it's French. Well, I suppose the plan will work with 2.
Oh, there he goes.
And now they're replaced with jokes about dancing cats and crazy women. When the movie isn't repurposing elements from previous entries in the franchise, it does actually introduce some new and interesting ideas. Unfortunately, Despicable Me 4 doesn't do anything with these ideas but introduce them. The opening scenes set up several potential character arcs for Gru, exploring his insecurity about his skills, his potential over-reliance on others to fight his battles, and his inability to bond with his newborn baby. These scenes also set up an undoubtedly interesting villain in Maxime Lamal, a former classmate from Gru's villain school that has mutated himself into a cockroach man and leads an army of near indestructible cockroaches. The problem comes from the fact that the filmmakers don't do anything with anything that was set up in these opening scenes. Does Gru have to learn to be more confident in his skills? No. Does he have to learn to become more self-reliant? No. Does he have to find a way to connect with his son? Technically yes, but it just kinda happens. Nothing Gru does actually helps that or makes it happen. By the end of the film, Gru Jr. just turns out to love his dad. Even the villain is completely wasted. Other than the opening scene, him being a cockroach had no real effect on the story. He's even defeated partly from falling off a tall building, despite his ability to fly. His cockroach army also doesn't do anything. When it was introduced that Maxime commanded an army of cockroaches, I assumed we'd see them fight Gru's army of minions. But we don't. We don't see them do anything. We're told they helped Maxime escape prison, but we're never shown how. Honestly, that's this film's biggest problem. It doesn't develop any of the ideas it sets up, several of which are borrowed from the previous films. Oh, also, Despicable Me 4 wastes so much of its voice cast, especially Sofia Vergara, Stephen Colbert, Kristen Wiig, and Steve Coogan. These are all amazing comedians in their own right, and most of them only get a handful of lines. Not even jokes, just lines. Despicable Me may not have ever been the most complex or engaging franchise, but the 3 main Despicable Me films usually had some form of message, theme, or lesson that Gru or others had to learn. In the first film, Gru has a complete change of heart after meeting the girls and learning what it means to be a parent. In the second film, Gru navigates the complexities of being a single dad while dating, while also learning how to work with others. And in the third film, he learns to accept people even if he disagrees with them, while Lucy learns what it means to be a mom. This film doesn't have any This film doesn't have any lesson, message, or a broader theme. Things just happen to the characters and we watch them react until the story's over. Despicable Me 4, in my opinion, is the worst film in the Despicable Me franchise, including the Minions movies. which is why I'm again conflicted about Despicable Me 4's stunning box office numbers. While I'm always happy to see a film succeed, especially with the theater industry being where it is today, it's sad to see that the film succeeding couldn't even clear the low bar set by the previous Despicable Me and Minions films. Which is extremely unfortunate, as Universal is fully invested in the future of this franchise, having just built a whole new Minions land, including a new ride and restaurant, in their Universal Orlando and Hollywood parks. This is not the future I want for animation. Pumping out new installments that don't need to be fun, engaging, or inventive, as long as they're part of a successful IP. Not every film needs to be on the same level as Spider-Verse, How to Train Your Dragon, or Luca. But when the Minions movies seem like better put together films, we have issues. And for better or for worse, Despicable Me and the Minions have been one of Illumination's and Universal's most profitable franchises ever. Even though, in the end, Despicable Me 4 is a boring and uneventful film that reuses many ideas from previous entries and doesn't develop any of the new ideas introduced, it's part of a franchise that I don't see ending anytime soon. And that's why I believe Despicable Me 4 earns a D- letter grade, and suggests that you don't see this film, unless you're a franchise completist. And even then, you should probably wait till it's on a streaming service that you already subscribe to. Honestly, Despicable Me 4 is a lot like Kung Fu Panda 4, an unnecessary sequel that doesn't come close to hitting the highs of the original trilogy. And when those highs weren't super high to begin with, we're in trouble. So, those are my thoughts on Despicable Me 4. Let me know your thoughts on the film or on the Despicable Me franchise as a whole in the comment section down below, as well as your thoughts on my art or what other films you'd like me to review. Thank you everyone who made it this far in the video. Make sure you hit that like button, and I hope you have a despicable day.